There's a space, a mental space, that every one of us has experienced. For many, it's been a space of great suffering. In fact, some of us in this room might be suffering in that space right now. It's been the cause of wars, shattered relationships, squandered dreams, and broken lives. But it's an imposter and can be easily conquered. I'm talking about the space between expectation and reality, the expectation gap. And the wider that gap becomes, the greater our suffering is. The research and 30 years of experience show that we can eliminate that suffering from our lives with 2 simple steps. Step 1, don't get mad at penguins because they can't fly. This is a lesson in acceptance. We should accept people's limitations and not expect them to do things they're not capable of, even though we may really, really want them to. And one of the things that makes that such a challenge is that oftentimes it's hard to see someone's limitations, especially if everything else we know about them suggests that they're not limited. Take a penguin, for example. What do you mean a penguin can't fly? It's a bird, it's got wings, it's got feathers, and birds with wings and feathers can fly. Except that penguins can't. Flight is simply beyond their ability. We could choose to get mad at that, or we can accept it. We often find ourselves dealing with someone who's continually falling short of our expectations. Maybe it's someone who's always late, no matter how important it is to us that they be on time. Yet we continue to expect that on this occasion, they won't be late. Or maybe we have one of those chronically unhappy friends who's always injecting just a little negativity, giving us a little personal jab every time we have some good news to share. Yet we continue to hope that the next time we have something to celebrate, they'll be happy for us and we can enjoy the occasion together. Now, that's the expectation, but if we think about it, we know the reality is something different. And that gap in there is where we suffer, because the reality is oftentimes the other person is simply not capable of behaving in the way that we want. If we do have that unhappy friend, the reality is that they're not capable of being happy for themselves, let alone us. It's got nothing to do with us. So the next time they get annoyed when we have some good news to share, don't get mad, don't take it personally. It's not their fault they're not capable of being happy for us. They're not making a choice. It is simply beyond their ability. And getting mad at them for that is like getting mad at a penguin because it can't fly. And penguins aren't just people. It's any situation where we find ourselves suffering in the expectation gap. It's the traffic jam when we're late. It's the torrential downpour on our beach vacation. It's that little piece of spinach we find in our teeth immediately after the most important interview of our lives. The reply all email meant for one person. And the ridiculous belief that we can limit ourselves to just one potato chip. Don't get mad at penguins. Step 2, choose your own ending. When people fall short of our expectations, we get to choose how we want to react. Some say we can't choose our emotional reactions because they're involuntary. We have no control. The truth is, we absolutely can choose. That doesn't mean we can choose to never feel that initial flash of anger, fear, or anxiety when we're triggered. But the lifespan of those instinctive responses is measured in seconds, not hours or days. And what happens next is entirely within our control. If we allow the instinctive response to continue, we focus on how this person is always making us feel angry, fearful, anxious. We go with the emotion, let it drive our response. And not just for hours or days, sometimes years, even decades. That's a choice. We can choose to not go with the emotion. We can choose to shift our focus away from that instinctive response. And with that awareness, we have the power to control our emotions rather than allowing them to control us. At that point, you get to choose your own ending. It may seem like this daunting thing, but it's remarkably easy and highly effective the first time we try it. In fact, the hardest part is just remembering to do it in the moment. The next time you feel yourself triggered, take just one deliberate breath. That's all most of us need to pull us out of an instinctive response and into intellectual awareness. That will give you power and control. Use it to choose your own ending. And of course, not all penguins look alike. Years ago, I was defending a company in a commercial litigation, business divorce. Complicated case, millions of dollars at stake. One day I'm standing above my desk, looking down at all the documents laid out, trying to get a bird's eye view, because for every legal and business reason you could think of, these parties should have resolved their dispute long before they ended up in court. I can't see what's driving this conflict. So I call up my client, who's the CEO of one of the defendant companies, and explain my confusion. He says, "Oh, I know what you're missing." And then he starts talking about Milton, who is the president of the company that started this entire lawsuit. And randomly, he starts talking about golf. He says, "Look, I love golf, play it all the time. It's like an issue in my family." But for Milton, litigation is his golf. It's sport to him. He sues everybody. He sued his business partner 30 years. He sued his next door neighbor. He even sued his own brother. And I've been doing business with Milton for years, and I guess it was just my turn to get sued. Well, everything about the case now instantly makes sense. Milton needs to win all the time. And worse, he needs to win by fighting. If the other side immediately caves to Milton's demands, he won't be satisfied. No, he wants to impose his will onto the other side. He wants to break the will of his opponent. Milton is what some people call an asshole. Maybe you work with a Milton. Maybe you're related to one. Miltons pop up in all aspects of life. The Miltons of the world would rather be right and would rather win than be happy. My Milton was a penguin whose ego imposed severe limitations on his behavior. Here's a tip. Catering to your own ego is costly. Catering to someone else's ego is free. If you find that you're dealing with someone whose ego is driving the conflict, feed that person's ego. It'll cost you nothing. Recognize they have a need to feel powerful. So tell them they're powerful and respectfully ask to not use their power to hurt you. Once we took that approach with Milton, he was pleasant, accommodating, and the case resolved in a matter of weeks. Once we accepted that Milton was a penguin who was never going to fly, once we closed the gap between our expectation of how we thought Milton should behave and the reality of his limitations, our suffering ended. So the next time you find yourself suffering in the expectation gap, you've got a toolkit to eliminate that suffering from your lives. Don't get mad at penguins. Don't expect people to do things they're not capable of. And choose your own ending. We all have the ability to disrupt our instinctive responses, control our emotions, and then choose how we want to react. If we can all inject this toolkit into our relationships, our families, our communities, and our careers, we can eliminate a whole lot of suffering. Thank you.